February 14, 1929, the year of the Black Bottom, 6-day bicycle races, flagpole sitting, and the first flight from Paris to New York. Mickey Mouse makes his screen debut, and Herbert Hoover is inaugurated as the 31st president with the words, "We in America today are nearer to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in any land." 6 months later, the New York stock market will crash and bring about the greatest depression in world history. In the city of Chicago, the time is 10:25 a.m. The temperature, 18 above zero. In the years following the passage of the National Prohibition Act of 1920, the nation's underworld rises to power and battles amongst itself, just as modern nations and corporations do. Open periods of gang warfare are followed by peace treaties and attempts at consolidation and monopoly, each of which is shattered as new warfare erupts in quest of the booming bootlegging and vice profits. By 1929, the gangs of Chicago operate 21,207 speakeasies, and their gross income reaches $357 million. 618 members of the city's underworld are murdered within 9 years. Corruption extends from the mayor's office to the humblest side street speakeasy. Peter Gusenberg, born Chicago, Illinois, September 22nd, 1898. Ex-convict, mail robber, burglar, hijacker, professional killer. When at the age of 13, he came home from school to find his mother dead, his first act was to pry the wedding ring from her finger and pawn it. He has been a member of Bugs Moran's North Side gang for the past 7 years. Frank Gusenberg, younger brother of Peter Gusenberg, born Chicago, Illinois, October 11, 1902. Burglar, car thief, extortionist, professional gunman, member of the North Side gang for the past 9 years. He is married to 2 women simultaneously, but lives with neither. Vincenzo de Mora, alias Machine Gun Jack McGurn, born Brooklyn, New York, July 7th, 1903. When he was 9 years old, his father was murdered. By the time he was 20, he had personally killed every man connected with his father's death. He has recently become a top triggerman and extortionist in the Capone organization. Alphonse Capone, alias Al Capone, alias Al Brown, born Castellamare, Italy, January 6, 1899. No criminal record. Raised in a Brooklyn slum, he has migrated to Illinois early in 1919. Shrewd, ambitious, and utterly ruthless, Capone in 6 short years has climbed from the status of saloon bouncer to become unchallenged leader of Chicago's most powerful underworld organization. To his associates, he is the big fella. To the public, he is Scarface Al Capone.
You don't know Tony Cermak, Frank?
Charles the Fixer Fischetti, born Castellamare, Italy, August 11, 1891. A second cousin to Al Capone, Fischetti acts as chairman at executive meetings. He is a heavy drinker, but never drunk. His principal value to the organization is his ability to suborn political leaders and public officials on both state and city levels. He will be murdered on April 7, 1951.
And that's where we can get her.
21.4.
Jake Greasy Thumb Guzik, born Peoria, Illinois, November 9, 1894. A one-time proprietor of a string of suburban houses of prostitution, Guzik is now in charge of all bootlegging sales and distribution for the Capone Syndicate. He will die of natural causes on July 11, 1956.
To tell the truth, Al, there's a whole lot about the guy we don't know to begin with.
Francesco Nittone, alias Frank the Enforcer Nitti, born Montedoro, Sicily, January 9, 1887. Nitti is in charge of the Capone organization's punishment squad, made up of accomplished strong-arm men and professional killers. On March 19, 1943, while under indictment for income tax evasion, Nitti will use a gun for the last time to take his own life. George Clarence Moran, born St. Paul, Minnesota, July 9, 1893. Ex-convict, burglar, horse thief, hijacker, suspected killer, present leader of Chicago's notorious and long-established North Side mob, which during the past 5 years has been almost constantly at war with the Capone organization for control of the city's bootlegging and gambling profits. During these 5 years, every previous leader of the North Side gang has been murdered by the Capone interests. Albert R. Kachelek, alias James Clark, born Krajunka, Germany, February 25, 1888. Ex-convict, burglar, car thief, suspected killer. Since marrying Bugs Moran's sister 5 years ago, he has become the #2 man in the Moran gang.
I learned how to drive when I was young.
John May, born Chicago, Illinois, September 28, 1897. Married, 7 children. Twice arrested on charges of safe blowing and burglary. No convictions. Has worked occasionally for the Moran gang as an auto mechanic. He has promised his wife he will stay out of further trouble with the law, but he is 3 months behind in the rent. Nicholas Sorello, born Marsala, Sicily, May 13, 1872. Brought to the United States by his cousin Dominic Forenza when in his late 30s. Married, with 5 children and 11 grandchildren. He has had difficulty learning the ways of the new world and has lived in continual poverty. He will be murdered on February 15, 1929, less than 24 hours after completion of the only criminal activity of his life. Dr. Reinhard H. Schwimmer, born Chicago, Illinois, December 1, 1896. Twice married, twice divorced. Schwimmer has no criminal record, but is one of that group of men who are fascinated by the exploits of gangsters. In the last few months, he has become acquainted with the members of the Moran organization and spends a good deal of time in their company. A licensed optometrist, he has recently abandoned his practice and is presently supported by his widowed mother. Adam Heyer, born Springfield, Illinois, June 26, 1881. Criminal record, 1 conviction for operating a confidence game. Married twice, 1 child, a son by his first wife. As a qualified accountant, Heyer acts as bookkeeper and collector for the Moran organization, as well as handling payoffs to local politicians and the police. His wife has been ill for several years, and he is careful to conceal the true nature of his business from her and from their friends. As Mr. and Mrs. Peter J. Gorman, Peter Gusenberg and an ex-showgirl named Myrtle Nelson Koppelman have occupied apartment 5C at 434 Roscoe Street for the past 7 months.
I'm gonna call it.
When interviewed by the press some weeks later, Myrtle Koppelman had this to say.
Oh, Pete and I have been married about a year. I can't remember exactly where we were married, except that it wasn't in Illinois. Well, I had no idea Pete was a gangster. He said he was a salesman. Truly a kinder, more gentle man. Well, you just couldn't meet one.
On January 7, the Moran gang puts into effect its plan to murder Mafia chieftain Patsy Lolordo. The first step is for Pete and Frank Gusenberg to use Joe Aiello's friendship for Lolordo as a means to enter his apartment. The second step of the plan to murder Patsy Lolordo is the systematic elimination of his bodyguards. Albert Weinschenker, alias Albert Weinshank, born Chicago, Illinois, December 23, 1893. No criminal record. Although Weinshank is not a gangster in the usual sense of the word, he has been associated with the North Side mob for the past 3 years. First as an operator of speakeasies, now in charge of a non-union cleaning and dyeing association controlled by Bugs Moran. On the evening of February 11, Angelo Molina, a second cousin of Joe Aiello's, buys a train ticket to Los Angeles. Aware that Al Capone has discovered his part in the murder of Patsy Lolordo, Aiello will use the ticket to board the train at the last minute in an effort to escape the vengeance of Capone. Albert Anselmi, born Marsala, Sicily, June 11, 1892. He is a member of the Mafia and a professional assassin, as is John Scalisi, born Castelvetrano, Sicily, January 24, 1895. In a period of less than 6 years, these 2 men acting together have participated in 31 murders, including those of Dian O'Banion and Earl Jaime Weiss. At 6:45 on the last morning of his life, John May takes an early bus to work. He has been promised a $10 bonus if he can replace the transmission of one of the gang's cars before noon. At 7:02 on the last morning of his life, Pete Gusenberg is considering ways to rid himself of Myrtle Koppelman. There are plenty more where she came from. At 7:23 on the last morning of his life, Albert Kochelek, alias James Clark, is thinking of buying a new car. His status in the gang demands better than this. At 7:30 on the last morning of his life, Reinhard Schwimmer is in desperate need of money.
See you around.
At 7:41 on the last morning of his life, Frank Gusenberg is wondering if he shouldn't go back to one of his wives. At 8 o'clock on the last morning of his life, Adam Heyer is calculating how much the cost of an operation for his wife will take from his savings. At 8:15 on the last morning of his life, Albert Weinshank has decided that his safety and his peace of mind are more important than $20,000 a year.
Okay, Mike. Quiet, Trench. George, is that you? Hello, boys. Something I can do for you?
Yeah, you can shut up. I'll line up, all of you. Face that wall.
You, over there.
Come on, move.
No way. You too.
All right, you two, let's go.
Listen, Buster. You better be kidding.
Move.
How's he, flat feet? Wait till they hear about this downtown.
Move!
Hey! You! You on the car! Let's go. Let's go.
Sir, I'm just a mechanic here.
Let's go.
All I do is work on the automobiles. I don't know
Move,
what to
Gibby.
do with these people.
Come on, move! Hands on the wall. Lean on it.
A few hours after the St. Valentines Day Massacre, the newspapers managed to locate Moran, something the police have not yet been able to do. Public indignation at the St. Valentines Day Massacre brings to a halt the most notorious era of open gang warfare in American history. Later in the century, the gangs will rebuild so that by the 1960s, their power will be far above that of the 20s. Once more, law enforcement agencies will be aware of the names of the syndicate leaders. And once more, they will not prosecute them, awaiting perhaps the moment when the public will demand, as it did in 1929, that the criminals be brought to justice. No one is ever brought to trial for the slaughter of the 7 men in this garage. But within 19 months, all 4 of the killers will themselves die of violence. On the evening of May 7, 1929, John Scalise and Albert Anselmi are invited to a banquet at the mansion of Al Capone, unaware that he has discovered their plot to murder him and take over his empire. Of the 2 supposed police officers involved in the massacre, Boris Chapman is shot to death on January 5, 1930, while attempting to rob a St. Louis jewelry store. The body of Adolf Moeller is found in a pond 12 miles south of Joplin, Missouri on September 8, 1930. Vincenzo de Mora, alias Machine Gun Jack McGurn, is murdered in a Chicago bowling alley on February 15, 1936, almost exactly 7 years after the St. Valentines Day Massacre he masterminded. George Clarence Moran disappears from Chicago soon after the mass murder of his followers. While serving a 10-year sentence for bank robbery in the federal penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas, he dies of lung cancer on February 25, 1957. Alphonse Capone, while he is never tried for complicity in the St. Valentines Day Massacre, His role as the man behind it goes unquestioned. 3 months later, he is in prison, and more than half of the remaining 18 years of his life are spent in federal penitentiaries. On January 25, 1947, Alphonse Capone, his mind gone, his body ravaged by syphilis, dies in his sleep. On February 4, his body is interred in the family plot in the Chicago cemetery.